Hello, welcome to the Learning Playlist, a podcast for the major and general education courses under the tutelage of Mr. Ryan Dave Ryla, USJR College Instructor. This project is a supplement to the said courses and as a means to share knowledge to the public at large. To help the podcast grow, kindly follow us at facebook.com/the learning playlist. And now, on to our show. Hello and welcome to our lecture on Society 1. In today's topic, we are going to cover basic concepts in political science. Now, Society 1 as a subject or as a course offering of the Department of Social Sciences and Philosophy, its syllabus has described it basically as a course catering to an understanding of Philippine politics and governance. Now, what better way to understand society from the perspective of politics and governance than to cover the basics of political science and of course its disciplinal approach into the matter of governance and of course Philippine society at large. So since this course is offered under the Department of Social Sciences and Philosophy, and I'm also a political science instructor under that course, perhaps we can begin this semester with a discussion on what do we study or what do we intend to study for Society 1. Now we understand, now we have come to an understanding that we are studying this subject or this matter of society from the perspective of pol sci. So let's begin. Okay. So first, let us understand what do we mean by politics. By politics, we mean several things, and these are authors that are mentioned a lot in the literature of political science. That is, first, by Goodin and Klingman, Politics is the Constrained Use of Social Power, by Harold Laswell, Who Gets What, When, and How, and by David Easton, The Authoritative Allocation of Social Values. So politics in general, if we can condense all of these three meanings, has something to do with two things: power and authority. Who has the power and what kind of power can they exercise, or can, let's say, a decision maker exercise on behalf of society or on society. Okay, so politics is basically an understanding of, or rather, it's basically the process of understanding how decisions are made for society. Okay, now there's no agreement as to how do we universally define politics. No, there are many definitions, and some of these definitions are conflicting and contested. So it has not yet been settled as to what do we really mean by politics. But at least from the disciplinal bias of political science, or from the disciplinal perspective of political science, it has something to do with power and authority. Now, our concern for politics has been articulated by Easton in 1957, in which he said that authoritative decisions are made and executed for a society. And politics, because of this definition given to us by Easton, is all about setting priorities or value, which is at the core of politics. No, how do we set values? How do we set priorities? We make political decisions, and political decisions can come in many forms in society, but in particular, they often affect us through programs or policies that have direct impact upon our lives. Okay, so studying political science, this is what we mean by the term, no, political science. It is the study of the state. At least this is the traditional definition of pol sci. And studying the state means we are not only studying the structures of the state, but we are also studying how politics is conducted on a day-to-day basis within the state, usually conducted through people. So politics has something to do with association of people, of men in particular, and women, of course, and of people of all walks of life, no, people from all walks of life. So in general, when we talk about politics, we're not simply talking about a one-way street. Rather, politics is more of a crossroads per se, with many intersections and with many possibilities going on. Understanding pulsi also means that we understand its functions and importance in this course of society one. When we look at society, when we look at the Philippines in particular, our communities in the barangay, we tend to look at it as a unit, as a whole, rather than simply dividing it into some parts, no, or into parts of it. Now, as a collective whole, society has many important functions. That's why when we look at, or that's why when we apply political science in understanding society, we try to understand that um, Polsci is not simply dealing with societal problems, but it is also dealing with many different affairs involving the public. Okay, so it's always involving public affairs where authority, decision making, and power is exercised. Okay, so the goal of political science are quite lofty, and you can read them for yourselves. These goals are not lofty, or these goals are lofty not simply because they need to be. These goals are lofty because there is an underlying obligation for those who understand society to actually not only interpret, but perhaps we can even say to educate others as to how politics should be. Nowadays, politics is more of a dirty word for people. No, it's more of a it's more of a word that has a very negative connotation to it. But I beg to differ. Politics is not dirty. It's just a tool, and like any other tool, those who wield it have the prerogative to wield it for good, or they can wield it for their own selfish interests. But the tool of politics is rather neutral. No, it is not meant simply as it is not meant simply as a means to get what we want. No, um, it's not simply tainted per se, but politics is a tool. It's more of a neutral tool, and those who wield it have the moral responsibility to actually exercise their discernment, their judgment of matter, of things that involve the public in general. Okay. So where does politics happen? It happens within a state. No, the processes of politics occur within a state. And a state, you have a definition here, and I'll let you read it. A state basically is composed of four factors. Okay? So here are the elements of the state, and you need to remember this: people, territory, government, sovereignty. And some would even add that there is a fifth element to it, and that is the recognition from other states, no, recognition from the family of nations. But that fifth one is it's rather this it's let's say we will not cover that one here, but we will cover the four basic. Okay, people, territory, government, sovereignty. And all of these combined together make up what we know today as the state. Primarily in international relations, we tend to view of states as territorial entities. They have clear borders that define who controls this, who controls that. That's how we look at it. For example, when you take out a map of the world, a political map of the world, you will see that it is divided by states according to their territory that they have defined over the years. And there are also people within state, let's say, who are the citizens, who are not the citizens of a state. Those matter in trying to understand society as we know it, because how policies, or how programs are exercised are defined by who the state counts as its own and who the states exclude as not their own. No? So there are people who are unfortunately still stateless even until today. They don't have any government to back them up. Okay, so the government, it's quite an abstract concept for us, but as we go along the course, we will understand that when we talk about government, we usually talk about its many different institutions, its different branches or parts within the framework of government. Now, when we look at sovereignty, when we talk about sovereignty, we talk about two manifestations, and that is internal sovereignty, or let's say domestic rule, and then we have external sovereignty or independence to carry out freedom to carry out its own activities without interference from outside. Even in ASEAN, even ASEAN is founded on the principle of non-interference because many of its member states are fiercely independent. No, so when we look at states, we are also asking ourselves, where did this come from? Where did they come from? And how did they came to be? So we can look at four theories of the state: divine right, force or necessity. Then there's the paternalistic theory and the social contract theory. As for the four origins of the state, these are rather nebulous concepts. No, these are best suited for discussions on political theory. However, we always come back to the idea of the origins of the state, especially later on um, when we talk about the constitution of government, the framework of government, because it matters to us how the state or how our state, in particular the Philippine state, came to be, and what is binding, what is not binding to us in terms of the actions perpetrated by or the policies enacted by those in power. No, so we can go back to this discussion at a much later time. All right, and that's basically it for this lecture. You can check out the references if you want to know more, and I would entertain any questions that you would post below in the comment section. Thank you for coming, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.